Hello and welcome to the first episode of Bits and Bytes, where I take a look at random bits of Beeb and Acorn software, books, magazine articles, and basically anything else that happens to have caught my eye. In this first episode, I'm taking it back to BBC Basics, sorry about the pun, and I'm going to explore the wonderful welcome tape. Now, I should say I never actually had one of these tapes myself as a kid, and so making this video was as much an exploration for me as anything else. The welcome tape came bundled as part of the welcome pack with a new BBC Micro, and as we shall see, it was an assortment of programs demonstrating some of the things that you could do with your shiny new Beeb. The software was published by BBC Soft, and it had a wide range of authors, including Andrew Chapman, Tim Dobson, A.R. Gordon, Alan Greenwell, Tom Hartley, Rod Mulvey, David T., Jerry Temple Fry, and Richard G. Warner. It even includes a poem written by the Liverpool poet Roger McGough. So, without further ado, let's rewind and press play. So I am actually using the welcome tape image here rather than the disc. It did come out on disc later on, but obviously the very first Beebs that were retailed came with a tape because that was the expected device that you would be connecting up to your BBC Micro. So here the tape is loading the first program from the cassette, and you can see it loading the various blocks of the program into memory. And now it's completed, and I haven't got a motor control, so I need to press space here. And now we get this amazing intro sequence. I had the volume up pretty high when I first loaded this a few days ago, and wow, it's loud. But there you go, there's the famous BBC Micro owl there, which is the Computer Literacy Project logo, I think. Welcome to the BBC Microcomputer. So as I was saying, I'm going to say I don't have a motor control for my virtual tape drive. And then you press escape and move from program to program in sequence. Now I'm going to speed up some of these loads because obviously it takes a long time for each one of them to load into memory. But this is technically this is the second program of the welcome tape, the index. As you can see, there are 16 programs. The first was that welcome page with the noisy graphics, and this index program is the second one of 16. And here are all the programs. And in this video, we're going to look at all of them. So yes, buckle in because we're going to work our way through this list. Some of them are more interesting than others, I think it's fair to say, but yes, the first thing it asks you to do here is tell it what the time is. Of course, the BBC Micro didn't have any kind of onboard time chip that would keep the system time as modern PCs and others are able to do. You'll see why it asks you for the time later on. Now, this program is the Keyboard Familiarity program. It's possibly not the most exciting of games. I'm not really sure it is a game. I think it's possibly designed to help people who are unfamiliar with a keyboard just get used to finding where the keys are. Perhaps if this was your first ever computer that you'd experienced. I do like that Mode 7 a diagram of the Beeb keyboard there, by the way. That's rather lovely. But yes, it teaches you to sort of spot where the keys are, understand what things like the shift lock and the caps lock buttons do and the impact that they have. And then basically it times you as to how quickly you can find the keys. It does it in 5 rounds. I'm only going to show the first of 5 rounds because, it doesn't make for the most exciting entertainment from a spectator point of view. But it's a nice little gimmick. I do think it's hard for me to now imagine what it was like to not know how to use a keyboard, given that I had computers put in front of me from a very early age, which I was very fortunate for, of course. But I suppose if you were an adult coming to a computer for the first time, something like this might have been helpful to just help you familiarize yourself with where things are. But enough of keyboard familiarity. We're going to go to the next program, Sketch. So here we are, we've loaded this one from the tape into memory, and this is essentially an Etch-a-Sketch program. So it's as good as your artistic skills are, and in my case, they're pretty abysmal. I was never very good at Etch-a-Sketch, the real thing. It was fun, but I can't say I was particularly adept at manipulating the controls. But this Etch-a-Sketch comes with 3 different colours, which is quite nice. So you can use the function keys there to change from cyan to red and then to yellow. and you can draw pictures using sort of Etch-a-Sketch approach. Actually, it has a slight advantage over the Etch-a-Sketch because you can actually do a pen up, pen down with the function key. I think F4, I think it is. You press it, and then you can actually move your cursor to another area of the screen. Here, I'm just drawing in classic Etch-a-Sketch style, where you can't obviously do pen up, pen down with a traditional Etch-a-Sketch. But I mean, I think my sort of first impressions of this program is that actually this would have been quite spectacular if you had never used a computer before. Which, I mean, the BBC Micro was aimed at that kind of audience. Thought I'd try and draw a map of the Isle of Wight here, by the way. But there you go. But yes, if you'd never used a computer before, I mean, the idea of a screen that you could control, bearing in mind most people's experiences of screens would have just been televisions, which are very much a passive experience. Here, you're actually controlling the graphics on the screen, not simply typing letters and numbers into a prompt, but actually controlling what the screen displays in 3 different colors as well. I mean, I don't want to oversell it, but I do think that this would have been quite impressive for your first time computer user, and would have really given you an idea of just what sort of powers you had at your disposal here. I'm going to clear the screen and try another one. So I'll try and demonstrate the pen up, pen down, because I didn't really do that just now. That was more of a classic Etch-a-Sketch drawing where you have to keep drawing from wherever your cursor goes. But if we do a little sort of doodle here, and then I'll do a pen up. There we go. And I can move my cursor to somewhere else on the screen, change colors, and do a little drawing down here. I'll try and create some sort of 1980s style, sort of, I don't know, abstract art. Let's give that a try. But yes, as I was saying before, I mean, particularly if you actually had some level of artistic skill, which I definitely don't hold myself out to having. I'm not too bad at doing pixel designs. I can if you give me a bit of graph paper and a bit of time, I'm not too bad at drawing pixel art. And I always quite enjoyed the VDU command with the Beeb, where you could redefine characters and turn them into other characters. So yeah, I suppose drawing pixel wise, I'm not too bad. But this sort of drawing where it's line art really, that's definitely not my strength. But who knows? I mean, maybe this will turn into something amazing. I mean, it's actually already starting to look a little bit like some of the framed pictures that you could buy back in the 80s. I could actually imagine seeing this on the wall of a designer kitchen or something back in the day. But yes, that's essentially the Sketch program. That's what it lets you do, and I think, certainly by comparison to some of the other programs on the Welcome Tape, it's not a bad program, and I think it definitely gives a good demo of some of the things that are possible with the computer. Now, of course, no Welcome Tape of any renown would be worth its salt without having a calculator, because that is what most people assumed computers to be back in the day, essentially just glorified calculators. And, well, yes, they are pretty good at doing maths, which is what this calculator program lets you do. Now, I will say it's slightly better than just a basic arithmetic calculator. It does provide a few extra functions. You can see here that we've got square root, sine, cosine. You can raise to different powers, so it's not too bad. And it also has memory functions as well, so you can store the results of calculations and then retrieve them. But basically, it works like you would expect it to work, really. You just type out your arithmetic, and it gives you the result, and then you can use that result as input to the next calculation that you want to make. So yes, again, some of these operations you could really just do from your basic prompt, but again, thinking who this Welcome Tape was designed for, it's possible that level of programming, if you want to think of it in that sense, might have not quite been at their level. So here's a nice little program where it's all been done for you, and actually the controls to carry out your own arithmetic here are quite straightforward. It even prevents you dividing by 0 without giving a horrible error. So well done to whoever programmed this one. You managed to handle that exception, which is good. That defeats quite a lot of programs even to this day if you don't catch that exception. But there you go. Look, and scientific notation as well for floating point values, as you can see there, which is not too shabby. Not too shabby at all. So pretty decent calculator. But I mean, there's not much more you can say about it. It's a calculator. Now, the next one, this one's quite fun. It's a sorting program. I mean, it doesn't have an awful lot of use, but I think where it comes into its own is where it actually demonstrates the sorting algorithm. So what you do is you give it 10 words, well, up to 10 words. So I'll give it 10 words. The quick brown fox jumps over. I'm trying to think. I think this is only 9. Yeah, we'll have to extend it. There we go. A very lazy dog. There we are. That makes it 10 words. I think it's only 9 words otherwise. But you start the sort, and there you go. It shows you the outcome. Now, what I like is that you can show it slowly, and what you'll get is a rather nice demonstration of the, or some variation of the bubble sort algorithm. Now, it doesn't give you the mathematical algorithm itself, but you can see how it essentially compares one word in the list to another, and if it is greater than or less than, it moves it up or down the list. And I think it's a nice visual demonstration of how a computer typically carries out alphabetic sorts. Actually, the maths behind alphabetic sorting, I mean, there's all sorts of different algorithms that you can use. Bubble sort is only one of a number of different algorithms, in fact. But I personally, as a programmer, I quite like the demonstration of the sort, and I think it's quite nice that it shows you that in slow-mo. Now, the next program that we've got on our welcome tape is the poem. Now, this is quite novel and also slightly weird. So they obviously commissioned Roger McGough to write this. Now Press Return, that's the name of the poem. And it's a sort of interactive poem, but I think it's fair to say that I'm not sure that Roger was quite sure what it was he'd signed up for, and I don't know how happy he was about it. Because after this rather nice sort of pleasantry of introduction, he says he's going to tell you a secret, and then basically says that he doesn't particularly enjoy the poem that he's writing. And he makes, some slightly rude remarks about computers in general. There's some nice wordplay. I really don't feel like it one bit. I mean, I can see what he's trying to do there. But yeah, it does feel a bit like he's a bit grumpy about writing this poem with words he would never use. This is quite nice. It's just showing you how you can search, replace, or manipulate strings in place on the screen. So I don't know. Also, the references to things like Fortran. I mean, there's not a lot of Fortran on a BBC Micro, but there you go. But I mean, it's a bit of fun, and I suppose if nothing else, it demonstrates some of the things that you could do. You could write programs that play around with text, allow users to provide input, and then use that input to create new text. But yes, it is odd. It is odd. You sort of feel like you're talking to someone who doesn't really know what they're up to. The best part is definitely this. This is the limerick creator. It doesn't really matter which option you choose because you get the same limerick. But I do like, or rather you get the same outcome. I like the name Cleef. So we'll have a young lady called Cleef who swallowed a set of false teeth. But then her computer took out a 6-shooter, which erased the young lady called Cleef. And then you get this rather violent outcome. Now, the limerick is essentially the same, but for the rhyming couplet at the start, based on the name that you pick. Other than that, you get exactly the same result each time. But it's a bit of fun, and it's a bit different. This one, by the way, it doesn't matter whether you forgive him or not. He says the same thing. It's typical of you, whether you're nice or not, I suppose. Now, this next step is, I suppose, trying to demonstrate loops, because essentially what it does is it just keeps looping through the same lines of the poem over and over again. It'll just keep going until or unless you press escape. So you have to interrupt the poem, otherwise it will just loop forever. So again, I suppose it's a neat demonstration of looping. I think with a lot of these welcome programs, they are written in BASIC, and you can load and then look at the program listing. So that would be one way of understanding some of this. There you go. I've interrupted the loop now, and you get this nice little round and round and round text art on the screen, which again I think is quite a nice little touch there. So yeah, that's such is the power of the computer, such is the loneliness of the poet. A plastic daffodil in a Grecian urn. Goodbye, Colin. Now press return. There you are. So that was Poem. Now we'll move on to the next program on the welcome tape. And it is Telephone. Now, this is a demonstration of a simple database that you can produce on the Beeb. Again, I mean, utility-wise, it's not bad. I think, again, it's more of a demonstration of the sort of thing that you might be able to produce yourself. I mean, it can only store up to 32 names, but it does demonstrate some of the features that you might want to program. So I'm going to give it some data, so give it some names here. You might spot a theme in some of my data entry. The phone numbers are, of course, entirely fictitious. So we'll give it Chris Curry. Let's give Sir Clive. Yeah, and then we just give it a phone number, and basically just run through. This starting point of the program, you enter as much or as little data as you like. So I'll give it a few names just to be able to demonstrate some of the other features of the program. There you go, Sophie Wilson there. And let's give it one more name, Herman Hauser. Why not? Okay, so I think that will do in terms of data entry. And so yeah, we go. If you press enter on the sixth one, then it comes out. As you pick the menu option, it flashes, which I quite like. So that's all the data that I've given it so far. And then you can pick different options. So you can sort alphabetically, and that sorts the phone numbers by the name. You can sort numerically, which will sort the numbers by number. Not a lot of value in that, but it shows you that you can sort by different values. And search as well. Now, this is quite powerful on the Beeb. So you can search for the first few letters of a name. So you can do pattern matching here. You can look for anyone who is Sir, Sir Clive. And you can also search for letters within a name as well. So if I search for C, I get both Sir Clive and Chris Curry together at last. So there you go. And you can erase your database. And now you've got nothing in there. So if I display, it says, you haven't got any data. You'd have to enter some more, which the program also lets you do. So again, a nice little demonstration of a simple database with a front end. I think it's not bad at all. Now, this is the first genuine game, if we don't count keyboard familiarity. And it's a very simple rendition of, it's not quite a Breakout game, but it's sort of a similar idea, sort of cross between Breakout and Pong. What I like here is it shows you the draw commands as it produces the gaming arena, which I think, again, is a nice little demonstration. It doesn't show you the code that actually makes the bat and ball work, but, I mean, you can't have everything. And then you get this rather nice little, as I say, sort of Breakout stroke Pong style game. The wall at the top will gradually move its way down the screen. It's not like the trash compactor from Star Wars. It does, if it gets to the bottom of the screen, it doesn't squish you. It just makes the ball distance between you and the bat a bit smaller. And then if you manage to keep the ball in play, it goes back up to the top of the screen again and just cycles round. You only have one life, and it's really just a case of seeing how long you can keep the ball in play. Every time you manage to hit the ball up against the wall at the top, you get 1 point. And it has a high score, so you can keep playing, and it will remember your score. And if you like this kind of thing, you can just keep playing and see how you can better your score. Now, I am not going to say that this is the most exciting game in the world, but what I do think it again demonstrates, first of all, if this was your first sort of computer experience, it shows you that yes, the computer is capable of playing games. And again, if you were to look at the listing for this, it's not particularly complex, and it shows you that with not too much coding, you can put together a very simple game. And it has some nice sort of demos of the things that a game can do, including the fact that it has sound effects. The sound effects are a bit repetitive, I will admit, but again, it's I think it's a nice demonstration of the art of the possible. And you could certainly imagine somebody taking this game and working on it and, developing it further, perhaps turning it into a genuine breakout style game. But yeah, I'm not going to diss it too much. It's not, as I say, it might not be that exciting, but it's a game at the end of the day, and albeit a simple one. It's no Arkanoid, but then again, it's good for what it is, and it's relatively gentle as well. I mean, it's nowhere near as fast as games like Arkanoid, that's for sure. So you can get a decent run through in it without instantly dying, which I think is good for your first time computer user. We'll see how long I can keep it in play for. See if we can get it to at least have the top of the wall come down to the bottom of the screen. But yeah, not a bad little game. And this might have been the very first game that a person ever played on their BBC Micro. If they loaded up the welcome tape, it's certainly the first game that you get. So there you are, Bat and Ball. Not too shabby, nothing special, but again, not a bad first game for your Beeb. Oh. What about the collision detection there? I felt like I did just about tap the end, but anyway, there you go. So we shall move on to the next program on the tape. Music. Yes, now this one is this is great. This is basically a mash the keys program and see what happens, because you're given this colourful display, and you just press keys, any old key on your BBC Micro, and each key makes a different note. I have failed to discern any real pattern. I don't really know how these relate to notes on any kind of discernible musical scale. They just seem to make random noises, and they produce this quite fun sort of punch card style display. It actually looks like the sort of thing that you feed into one of those automatic organs that you see at fairgrounds, which automatically play tunes. But yeah, I mean, I can tell you what, I can imagine if I'd had this as a kid, I would have loved this, because it's just noise. And what child doesn't enjoy making lots and lots of noise in the name of education, of course? So yeah, I mean, there's really not too much more to it than that. But I think it's a slightly wacky, slightly eccentric sort of program, and I like the idea behind it, and how, the longer you hold down the key for, the more the longer the note sounds for. It kind of progresses along the screen, and then you get a new sheet. Yeah, it's fun. It's fun. It's a bit silly, but I think it's quite an enjoyable little thing. And I suppose it's really up to your attention span as to how quickly or not you get tired of this. But yeah, I think it's reached the end of its natural life. So we'll flatline that and move on to the next program. This is Clock. Now, this is why it asked us what the time was earlier. Although I have to say that given that this is loading from a tape, the old Beeb does struggle a little to work out exactly how much time will have elapsed since you gave it that time. So it's not done a bad job. When I was recording this earlier, it was about 5 minutes out, so it's not terrible. But I was reading online that actually this may well have been the first time that a computer user of the day had ever seen an analog display. I mean, a digital display like this one may have been something they'd seen on, a typical Sinclair watch, for example. But the analog display on a computer screen, particularly the way that it's rather lovingly drawn with the circle and the clock face, yeah, it's something that I think would have been quite intriguing for a first-time computer user. So yeah, there you go. Not a lot more to it than that, but that's the clock program. Now this one is a nice demonstration of the level of sort of graphical quality that you could try to get on a BBC Micro. To do that, it essentially creates a rather special sort of Venetian blind style photograph of who I think is supposed to be Marilyn Monroe. I think it's a variation on the famous Andy Warhol Marilyn Monroe picture. But I think that this is actually rather clever. It's a static program, obviously, you can't interact with it. It's just demonstrating the sort of graphical quality that you could produce on a Beeb. And I like it. I think it's pretty smart. Be intrigued to know how they actually plotted the diagram in the first instance, and then it does a nice little bit of color palette switching to show. It's again giving that sort of Warhol feel. Yeah, I think it's pretty cool. I like the graphics. I like the style of graphics produced here. It's yeah, it's rather splendid. Um, but it is a static program, as I say, so there's not anything you can do. You can't feed it photographs of your own. That would have been quite something back in the day. But again, once more, it's a demonstration of quite literally the art of the possible. So we'll go on to the next program. Patterns, more artwork, but this is a sort of slightly wacky. Well, they're not. I don't think they're technically fractals, but they're sort of fractal-esque. Yeah, you use two function keys in sequence to produce weird, sort of bizarre graphical patterns on the screen. Again, I can imagine that I would have particularly enjoyed this as a child because it just looks so sort of eerie and mysterious. And the fact that you can experiment by pressing the different function keys in turn kind of gives you that sense of control that you're somehow creating the graphics. Probably in much the same way as people think that they're creating artwork with AI these days just by writing a few words and getting it to do all the hard work. But anyway, I won't get onto that particular soapbox just now. But yes, it's a nice sense of achievement, I suppose, of like playing around with the function keys and seeing what weird patterns you can produce. I have to say, a few of these remind me of the old Doctor Who intro credits, particularly this one, the sort of Patrick Troughton era intro credits. They sort of had this kind of graphical style. Yeah, definitely that one. Doesn't that look very Doctor Who to you? I think it does. But there you go. So yes, you can play around with this one to your heart's content and try and see what sort of patterns you can produce. After a while, they do start to become a bit samey because there's only so many combinations of function keys that you can use. But nevertheless, I think it's a nice bit of fun, and it's an intriguing sort of graphics generated from algorithms, which is different from the previous program where it was a very definitive image that was being used. So we'll move on to the next one. Aha, yes. Well, this is, I think, fair to say this is probably most people's favourite program on the Welcome Tape. It is, of course, the famous Yellow River Kingdom, which I must confess I had never played before. I'm sorry if that makes you think any the less of me for admitting that, but that's why it never featured in the top 85 games countdown. I never came across this game back in the day, but that's because I didn't have the Welcome Tape, so I didn't know of it. But it's a rather clever little resource management simulator. Essentially, I'm pretty sure it's set in China. I mean, the Yellow River is in China, and the game revolves around the harvesting of rice and defending your village, both from flooding of the Yellow River and indeed from thieves in the mountains. So you have a population size, and there are 3 seasons. We're in winter at the moment. So in winter, you can't grow or harvest any of the rice. So really, you just need to focus on. No, I don't want to put people in the fields. There we go. I want to defend the dike and protect the villages. And it was a quiet season, so nothing happened, which means that our population's gone up slightly. And we're now in the growing season, which means I've got to balance my needs between defending the dike from flooding, working the field so that I can grow some rice, but also protecting the village from thieves. So with my 380 population, I'm going to do 50 to defend the dike, 150 to work in the fields, and then 180 to protect the villages. And we're going to use 1,000 baskets to grow new rice. And here's the rather lovely animated Yellow River. There's a thief popping out of the mountain. I like the little skirmish graphic there. That's rather fun. Yes, there you go. First growing season of year 1, nothing to worry about. So very few deaths from floods, no deaths or losses from flooding, so that's all good. So now we're in the harvest season, which means I still need to worry about defending the dike, but I need to put people in the fields to gather up the rice and also protect the villages. So we'll make an allocation like so. Oh, a thief attack. He runs back into the mountains again. No flooding this time. There you go, nothing to worry about. We did pretty well there. So we've now, population's gone up again, and we've got quite a lot more rice now because I made some sound decisions in terms of harvesting and growing. And we're in winter, so nothing to harvest or grow, but we want to try and avoid as much of that flood as possible. I think I have to say, of having never played the game before, I really, really like it. It's very clever. I mean, there's not a huge amount to it in the sense of what you have to do, but the decisions that you make and plotting that against the randomness of the game of where the river will flood and in what direction, all things combined, it just produces something which I think is rather special. And I think this, more than possibly any of the other programs on the Welcome Tape, would have inspired budding programmers, certainly games programmers, because this already starts to give you that sense of, well, if you could produce something like this, I could extend it in this way, or I could maybe, make it slightly more graphical or more interactive, or introduce additional variables into the game to add some extra complexity. But as it stands, for a nice Mode 7 game, it's deceptively difficult as well, because depending on what decisions you make early on, and indeed the extent of the flooding, you can end up in quite a pickle if you don't calculate things in the right way, and if you're unlucky, because there is definitely an element of luck, obviously, in terms of how often you get attacked. Worrying losses, not so good there. But basically, the game will run for 4 years, so 3 seasons across 4 years, so essentially 12 goes. And at the end of that, you can decide whether or not you want to carry on. So we're in the growing season again now. I'm going to go for broke and try and grow as much rice as possible. Hopefully not get too much in the way of flooding or thief attack. There you go. Worrying losses again. Oh dear. Baskets of rice lost during the attack. 750? Goodness. The population's gone down. It was in the 300s earlier. Well, we're in still harvest season now, so I need to make sure that I put enough people to work in the villages. Otherwise, I'm not going to be able to harvest the rice that I've sown. Now into winter, so it's really just prioritising defending the dike and protecting the villages. We don't care about the working in the fields. So we'll do this. Ooh, the river's getting a bit close to... Oh, no. Oh, dear. That's completely wiped out one of the villages. Oh! It's wiped out 2 of the villages. Oh no. Oh, it's making a bid towards the 3rd one there as well. Ooh. Ooh. No. Okay, well, 2 out of 3 villages. Crikey. Disastrous losses. That's more like it. The first time I played this, actually, I got disastrous losses, I think, at the end of every season. So, yes, I started off better than I've managed to... get to at this point. Okay, there you go. It sense checks your maths there. Tried to put too many people working in the fields compared to how many I have defending the dike. I do like the fact that it auto-calculates your 3rd number, so you don't have to try and do it all in your head. Although, to make it more of an educational game, maybe they should have insisted on you working it out yourself, but there you go. So, yes, we're into year 4 now. Worrying losses once again. Oh, dear. But we've got, where are we? Harvest seasons. We've got 2 more seasons. We've got harvest season and winter to go. So let's see. I've managed to halve the population. I don't know. Oh, a quiet season. Well, that's good news. That means that, there you go. I've managed to survive for 4 years under your glorious control. By ancient custom, we offer you the chance to lay down this terrible burden. Yes, well, I'm going to lay down the terrible burden because we need to move on to the final program, in fact. Oh, technically it's the penultimate program because the final program is the goodbye message. But this is, I'm going to say, possibly my least favourite program on the whole of the Welcome Tape, because it seems to be some slightly odd, I don't know, 1970s, early 80s psychobabble. I've never come across these biorhythms before. Intellectual, emotional, physical. I don't know how much science there is behind any of this. It's the first time I've ever come across it, and I'm not really sure that this holds a lot of water. But anyway, I suppose what it's really trying to demonstrate is the combination of maths and graphing. I'm obviously not going to use my real date of birth, but we shall put something that's... well, I'll give it the right year. There you go. Right, so today's date is the 19th of November 2023, so let's pop that in. Oh, that makes me feel slightly sad. The program had a terminal date of 2020, so you can't put anything in past that. Bless them. I suppose back when they wrote this... Oh, you can't even go into 2020. All right, well, let's make it nice and simple. Let's go for 1999. There you go. So yes, you give it the elapsed number of... Well, it works out the elapsed number of days between the two dates. And then it has to actually load another bit of the program. So this second part of the program is the bit that does the graphing. And if you press spacebar, you get this nice sort of sine wave graph, bell curve, however you want to describe it. Quite what this is really meant to tell you, I don't know. That's my physical, emotional, and intellectual lines being plotted, I guess. I don't really know what I'm supposed to make of that, to be honest with you. But there you go. I suppose as a demonstration of its mathematical abilities, it's not bad. But yeah, it's a bit of a silly program. No offence to the programmers that wrote it. I'm sure that it was all the rage back then, but possibly doesn't quite survive the ravages of time. Which leaves us with the final program on the welcome tape, which is the message. And the message is that most of these programs were simple examples of their kind, and that if you want more details, you can write to the BBC Computer Literacy Project at the PO Box address, enclosing a large stamped addressed envelope. Those were the days. So that brings us to the end of the welcome tape. A fine bit of software, a lovely collection of little utilities and demonstration programs, and a first-rate little game, Yellow River Kingdom, which, yeah, I think was great fun. And I can now see why some people were concerned that it hadn't made its way into the top 85 games video countdown series, because, well, I mean, it's thoroughly deserving. It would have definitely been in there somewhere if I had actually played it before. So apologies for that. But yes, overall, my impressions of the welcome tape are very positive. I think it's lovely. I think the programs on it are all great demonstrations of things that you could do as a first-time computer user. I think it would have really wowed you. But that's it for this first episode of Bits and Bytes. I hope you've enjoyed it, and I hope that you'll join me for the next Bits and Bytes episode in the series. And until then, that's all, folks.